So 24 by 16 is 384. So I've got, we're gonna have some fun with math. 384 square inches to 1500. And you've got, what was that, 14? Blake. Hey, Blake. I don't know who this guy is. He's crazy. 14 by 12. Not 2. 14 by 12. 168. My rough guess is about half. So 168 times 1500 divided by 384. 650. Ho ho! Yep. About 650 would be my recommendation there. And you can go above, below. So the sort of determining factor for this is really what your end use is going to be. So I would think that about 650 is optimal. You can always increase that. So if you need more mealworms, for example, so if you're doing this for a gecko or a single reptile, having that drawer there is probably way more than enough without having to add more stuff in it. If you don't have more space or more trays, you can always add in like an egg carton, toilet paper rolls, and what that does is it puts extra surface area into that bin to give more room for those beetles to coexist. If you put in too many, so I would say if you put in above that 650, you're going to start seeing cannibalism. They'll kill each other off and basically get down to that 650, maybe a little bit more depending on how aggressive they're all being. But they'll start to weed themselves out. But then you've got dead beetles laying around, and sometimes those can get kind of stinky in a single location depending on airflow. So you can go lower. You just won't have as much production, which again is probably not the end of the world. Doing it for chickens is extra money. Okay, the chickens are going to go through them, right? So 1 to 2 tablespoons per chicken a day is usually what you want to try to stick to. Remember that mealworms are a supplement to all the other feed that they need to get, all the other nutrients they need to get. Definitely hit that 650-ish, start aiming for around there. And every now and then, so one of the things I do with the bins here is, I actually did it this morning, I collected freshly hatched beetles, weighed them out, created some new trays, and I had like 90 grams left over, not enough for a whole tray, so I'm putting in 150. So I took those and basically sprinkled them amongst some older trays to kind of replace the ones that had died. Death is natural, so if you have some of that, it's not a big deal. It'll be from just nature doing its thing, cannibalism if they're fighting, that sort of thing. So I add a little bit in every now and then. I actually started doing mealworms for chickens 7.5 years ago. I'm going to have to start saying 8 in January. That's crazy. It's already August. Thank you for the question, Shannon, and congrats on the pupa. That's a tough thing to get through. If you start having, one of the common things folks will see with pupa is that when they emerge, when the beetles start to pop, you might see some mutation or some deformation is what the word I was looking for there, deformation, where maybe the wings don't come out right or something on the beetle just doesn't look right. Depending on how bad it is, you may want to just cull that. It's not that big of a deal if that mealworm gets in there and starts messing around. But the likely cause of that is usually low humidity during pupation or low moisture availability for the larva right before they change. So just something to keep in mind, and there's plenty of ways to tackle that. So just monitor your farm as you keep going, and then as you run into some questions, ping us in the group here, join another one of these sessions, whatever works. But still laughing at that comment there, Blake. All right. So today I thought was going to start out not so great and then turned out okay. I shipped orders yesterday, and unfortunately I shipped one of the orders to the wrong address. Thankfully my customer caught that and started asking questions, and I said, well, I got the address from you, but let me go check and see what I did. And turns out that I originally, like when folks approach me for mealworms, asking for a quote or a price, shipping is always dependent on where you're at, right? So it costs more to ship from me to Washington, for example, than from me to Missouri, because that's where I am. But even in Missouri, I'll always ask, what quantities are you looking for, and what's a good zip code so that I can get you a shipping estimate? Because I don't want to ask for your personal info if you end up not ordering from me. There's no need for me to have that. So I asked for that zip code, and then I went and found a random restaurant in that zip code. real building. Like I went to Google Maps and found a building that was operational to get a good address. And then I forgot to change it before I shipped it. And so she reached out late last night and said, where did that come from? And I went and did some digging. I said, I'm sorry, that's my fault. Here's what happened. I explained what I did. And I went to the post office. I told her I'll go to the post office in the morning and make sure it's set right. I'll take care of it. So I went there this morning and talked with the post office. They're going to reach out to the other post office. Everything should be okay. So went from being, oh man, I can't believe I did that, to okay, it should be all right. And kudos to that customer. Grateful. She was very accepting of my apology and my mess up. Didn't make me happy that I did that. I was pretty frustrated, but I was very thankful for that. So it's turning into a better day. Amy, what are temps and humidity supposed to be at? Mine are just at room temp. Supposed to is, I'll again go back to what I said earlier, really dependent on what your end use case is. So here we're trying to maximize efficiency. We're trying to produce as many as possible because we're running a business, right? And so I'm running at 70% humidity and I'm running at 79 degrees Fahrenheit. I've actually been a little higher recently, but I'll talk about that later if anybody's curious. So I try to aim for 79. 80 to 85 is really, an optimal range from a production perspective. I tend to shy away from going above 80 purely for risk mitigation. So I live in central Missouri. There were days it did not get as hot as some places. So I'm by no means whining or anything. I'm pretty happy with the weather in general. But we did get up into the low hundreds, and what keeping it set at 78, 79 allows me to do is, if there's a problem, I've got more runway from a temperature perspective to deal with that and address it. So I live in a small town. If this actually happened 2 summers ago, I woke up one morning and the air conditioner didn't work. So I had enough time to get up into a bigger town, which is about 25 minutes away, get a new unit, bring it back and install it before that temperature creeped up to where it was too high. So I do that purely for risk mitigation, and I have not seen a big, going from 79 degrees to 85 degrees. I haven't seen a huge increase from a data perspective on production there. So if you're lower, so room temperature, that varies from person to person, right? Some people like it in the upper 60s, some people like it in the 70s. Room temperature is fine. What will happen is you'll see a slight decline in production as you decrease the temperature. So if you go from 79 down to 75, down to 70, you're going to see a decrease, but not a, oh my gosh, I have to heat the house, or I have to, get it warmer, get that spot warmer. As you start getting lower, you get into the 60s and the 50s, you're really going to start to see more of a prolonged, 72 is fine. I live in Lincoln. Hey, message me. I've got family down there. Very cool. Yes, Lynn, Missouri, your temperature 72. You're going to hit those high points. So you want to be careful. Same weather as me. You probably got rain last night. Big thunderstorm went through. So 72 is fine. You're not going to see a big degradation in any sort of production. Even if you're trying to do this to sell these, 72 is just fine. I wouldn't be too concerned about it. I would say once you start increasing your production or change the model that what you're trying to do with your mealworms, you could look at potentially trying to increase that temperature in a specific room or something. But all good from a production perspective. Humidity is the other thing that you want to keep an eye on, which you asked about there. So we're running at 70%, and that fluctuates. Like we'll get up to 70 to 75 is probably the range that we're shooting for. I have a dehumidifier in the summer and a humidifier in the winter. And what you want to be careful there is you don't want to go too low. So if you get down below 45, 50, if you get down below that, and that's pretty normal in a home, especially if you got your dehumidifier going, you'll start to see death in your pupa when they're in the pupal stage. They may need a bit more moisture at the end of the larva stage before they turn into pupa as they transform. And you'll start seeing that in pupa die-off and beetle deformation, which I mentioned earlier. So just keep an eye on that. Depending on what kind of bins or trays you have, If you wouldn't mind putting that here in a comment. Do you have closed bins, like a drawer system where you close that drawer and it's like totally enclosed, like not sealed? I'm not talking like, you know, hermetically sealed, but you close that drawer and it's closed. It's not an open top tray. If you've got a closed tray, you're actually creating a microclimate inside of there. So if your room temp or your room humidity is 72 and 50%, inside that bin, it's likely going to be warmer because, you know, unless they're by an AC air duct, you know, vent coming out, it's likely going to be warmer because the insects generate heat and it's going to hold it in because it's closed. And from a humidity perspective, it's going to vary based on how often you add your moisture. So if you add moisture in and you close that thing up, you're now building a microclimate with more humidity because that moisture is going to start coming out of the whatever you put in there. I have no clue what humidity levels are. I guess I need to check that. And yes, plastic drawers. It's something like, it's not the end of the world, right? Like a hygrometer, I think is the word you want to look for there. You guys are probably going to figure this out before I find it. Measure humidity. I believe it's a hygrometer. Was that right? Oh, come on. Did you guys beat me yet? Yes, hygrometer. Haha. So you could pick one of those up if you wanted to. You don't absolutely have to have one. So you just want to keep an eye on like the visual things you can look for. If you have moisture buildup inside of your bin, like on the edges, a lot of times with those closed trays, that's a common thing where you add too much because you're worried about, you know, not starving, but dehydrating, not giving them enough moisture. So you add too much and you see moisture on the side, that means you're adding too much. Otherwise, if you start seeing pupa and some deformation in the beetles, then it's too low. If you start seeing pupa dying in the pupa stage, then it'll Govee, yes, that brand, Govee. That's right, Sue. That's a good one. I do see quite a bit of dead pupa. It might be worth, you know, if you can pick up a hygrometer, that'll work. That'll be good. There's an option there from Sue, and that'll get you down the right path, right? If you search for Govee on Amazon or on Google, you'll be able to find different options. Otherwise, one of the tricks that you can do is get a paper towel, and this isn't a closed bin scenario, so you're going to create a microclimate in there. Get a paper towel and barely mist it, barely get it any sort of damp. Put that in the bin with your pupa and close it. And then that's going to give you some extra moisture inside of that bin. Start lower than you think, or start with less moisture than you think you're going to need, or that you're not sure. Like if you've never done that before, start low and just increase that based on the bin, the number of mealworms and pupa and beetles and all that fun stuff. So it's just like any other animal, really. Like if you've ever taken care of dogs, cats, cattle, things like that, you'll start to get in tune with, you know, how much moisture to add for a particular bin, for your babies, for your other things, et cetera, et cetera. So keep at it. We all make mistakes. Come back to the group and let us know what you learn or what you need help with, and be happy to help. Chris, welcome. It's so odd how it tells me when people are here or not here. Like I've seen people come and go, and for whatever reason, Chris, I got a notification that you're here. So not to call you out or anything, but hey, I see you. Thank you for joining. You bet, Amy. My pleasure, my pleasure. Anytime you have any questions, post them in the group, bring them to these chats. Talking mealworms is a lot of fun. All right. And again, if anybody has posted a question and I haven't messed with it yet or recognized it, please let me know. Shoot me a message here. All right. If you guys have any questions, open book. Any questions about mealworms, mealworm farming, the building here? We moved in like 5 or 6 months ago. Insects came in 2 months ago. And so it's a whole new adventure, different scale, different size, different ways to do everything. So we're changing a bit. Shannon, do you control your male to female ratio or just let them do their thing? I just let them do their thing. There is a way to distinguish the males from the females. I think somebody recently posted the superworms, the beetles, what the differences are there. The real close headshot where it was like, hello, I'm a beetle. Blake, was that you? I feel like that might have been you. And the same thing with the Tenebrio Molitor with the mealworms. You can tell the male from female, but I don't go through and grab out 750 of the male and 750 of the female. It's far too much work. I just let nature average it out and go from there. Hi, your website says the quantity of mealworms you ship, which is great, but I'm wondering if you know the weight in ounces. I do. So I am very tentative and hesitant about sharing that. And the reason for that is everyone's mealworm colony weights are going to be different. Depending on what size you want to sell, large, medium, small. And even within those ranges, there can be different sizes or different interpretations of what medium versus large are. And so what I encourage everybody to do is what I've done here, I harvest the worms that I'm going to harvest, and then once to twice a month, or once every 1 to 2 months, what we'll do is we will physically hand count 50 count, weigh it, and then we will hand count another 50 and another 50, different 50s, and we just keep going. Usually we do about 10 to 20, depending on the day. We do at least a minimum of 10, and if we see a weird variance, we'll add it, we'll bump it up to 20, and basically we'll do that to then get the average. So if the average weight of 50 ends up being 9 grams, 10 grams, 12 grams, whatever it ends up being, then we'll take that and multiply it. So if let's do 10 for easy math. Let's say 50 mealworms is 10 grams. Then if you want 500 mealworms, it's 100 grams. If you want 5,000 mealworms, it's 1,000 grams, that sort of thing. And so we do that routinely just to keep track of. It can be very deceptive when you look at a mealworm and it looks like a medium-sized mealworm, or the ones that we harvest, but they might be a little bigger or smaller. So we like to check that. It varies very little. So it's not like, if you can only have the time to do it every 3 or 6 months or something. It varies pretty small for us. We see a pretty small adjustment from month to month. So that's what our current process is. Sorry, my brain froze there. I saw Blake's comment there. So that's what our current process is. And we do the same thing, so that weight for the mealworms and the count. We also do that for the beetles. I do the same thing for superworms. So I'm counting them out, finding an average weight, documenting that, and then just doing the math real quick with a quick spreadsheet, printing that out so that I have it handy. And then away we go. It's changed so little in the last 6 months. We've done it multiple times here since we moved the insects in, just to try to stay on top of it, make sure that nothing in the new building is adversely affecting them, either positively or negatively. And it's been close enough that I haven't had to print a new sheet for a while. I weigh them out so frequently all the time that it's just in my brain. So I don't have a printed sheet with me, unfortunately. So that is what I would encourage you, Joanna, to do, to find out for yourself, because what I don't want to do is just tell people, here's what it weighs. Every colony is going to be different. And what I don't want you to do is get stuck in a position where you go and sell mealworms to someone, they then count those mealworms and come back and say, hey, I didn't get what you said what I ordered. And believe it or not, I actually had somebody do that. When I very first started, years and years ago selling, so this would have been 5 years ago I started, it was within that first few months. I sold some to a family that was raising geckos, I think. And so their daughter was the one who was doing it, and she came and bought them. Her and her parents met me somewhere, and she went home and counted them and said, hey, you said I was supposed to get 550 because I always put extra 10%, and even on local deliveries, local pickups, I always add 10%. And I only got 520. So the people actually do that. It was pretty interesting. It was a fun conversation. So Jennifer, just curious, how much is wheat bran near you right now? I'm in Nevada, and it's almost $20 for a 40-pound bag. Let me check. I want to say mine are 50-pound bags. I want to say it's 33 cents a pound. 40. Let's see, when was this? This is my tax bucket. This is where all the receipts go. All right, so this was last month. $40 for a 50-pound bag. So $40 for a 50-pound bag. $18. Yes, brand costs have gone up. And that's why I can't do this math right off the gate. So 50 pounds, 80 cents a pound? No. Are you seeing a wide range set? So I'm at 40 cents a pound. I don't know why my head is broken here. This was 1,000 pounds, $40 a bag. That's what it was. Yeah, 40 cents a pound. It was, I want to say like 30 cents, maybe 31 cents here. So it did increase. I think it's going to come back down. I'm not super worried. I did start, I went around to a couple different places. I found, one of the places near us, MFA, is big. And they had dried distiller grain. So I've got a bin testing with that right now, and then commodity feed, which is just a bunch of different commodities like soy, wheat, etc. They take all of the leftovers from that and basically mix it all together. It was 11 or 12% protein. Just giving that a shot. It's a pellet, so I have to grind it, which is just more work for us, but I like to have backups. So, are you seeing a wide variance in the size of pupa and beetles? I'm still trying to decide if tiny pupa produce tiny beetles, and that will affect the ultimate worm production down the way in the, in the colony. That is a great question. So I recently commented on an Instagram post. There's somebody, not in the US, I can't remember where they're located, but they are running, they're running a mealworm farm, and they are doing a lot of like laboratory style testing. They're doing, very controlled things where they're documenting things very well. Somebody there has got to have a scientific background. And what they just published recently on Instagram was that they've been selectively breeding. They've been picking the bigger, healthier beetles. And what they tracked was the pupa weight. So they weighed individual pupa, and I'm trying to remember the numbers. I believe they said it was like 0.13 milligrams for a pupa, and after they did this selective picking the bigger ones, they got a 0.2 pupa, 0.22, 0.23, something much like doubled the size. And I asked the question on the post. I said, is bigger really better here? Like, does that beetle or does that pupa produce a healthier beetle in some way, or a more eggs or better? Like what's the? It's bigger, but what does that mean, right? And one of the responses that they mentioned was that they have a very low, extremely low die-off rate. And so my presumption is that the bigger pupa has more moisture in it, has more water in it, so that it can get through that pupal stage, which is very difficult, right? You got to go from the larva to the pupa, so there's a transition there, and then from the pupa to the beetle. It's another big transition. And so my hypothesis is that those larger pupa have more moisture to handle that and end up being healthier. That being said, I need to go dig up the papers. This was late last week that I commented. I need to go pick up some of the research papers that I found that basically showed there wasn't a big difference from a production perspective. Now, what I'm wondering is if the production perspective was looking at, okay, I've got 1,000 pupa that turn into 1,000 beetles, and those beetles produce the same amount of eggs and thus larvae as the smaller beetles, the smaller pupa, the smaller beetles. But what I'm curious about is if they mentioned anything about die-off in that test, because I'm wondering if there's something to that. So I have said for a long time, no, it doesn't matter. And now I'm getting some of those quasi thoughts of, I'm going to need to look into that. Because I'm seeing quite a bit of die-off of my pupa, and I'm not happy with that. So I need to figure out some ways to tackle it. And that's one of the things that might be out there. So, good question though, Sue. And keep asking it. Like as I learn stuff, I'm going to post it, and you guys see all the stuff I share. So it's definitely something that I want to do some more research on, but my list is a mile long right now. I'm reading this comment about the wheat bran here, Sue. $22.99 pound. The Seymour bag was printed 50 pounds. That was an interesting conversation with the vendor when I actually weighed the bag before I opened it. Oh, I will have to weigh one because mine are 50-pound bags from Seymour. That's interesting. I'll have to check that. It feels like 50 pounds, but we're up to $21.75. Yeah, it's in the. That's a good price for bran right there. Felicia, that's fantastic. Caitlin, what do you do with your beetles after they aren't laying eggs or have died? So we keep track of the beetles. We start the trays. Actually, just started 4 or 5 today. We don't have a set schedule on when we start trays. As we collect the freshly hatched beetles, however many are there, we put those into trays. So we create those. Today is the, I should know this, today's the 8th, 9th, that was close. Today's the 9th, so we will put a termination date of 8 weeks from now, 2 months roughly, of 10/9. And so that week, whenever we do beetle swap, that's been varying a little bit lately with all the changes going on, but we try to do that once a week now. And so we'll look at all the trays that are at or really close, right? Like on 10/9 or on 10/8. If we do beetle swap, we'll look at, hey, there's that bin that tomorrow is going to be toast, so we'll go ahead and take it. And we call that bin. So we separate the beetles out, we put the bran back in, because it's still got eggs in it. It's a regular tray at that point. But those beetles are then considered spent because they've laid 95+% of their eggs. Ben will take those to feed his chickens. They're still a good nutrient source. They're still an insect. It's still that, live animal instinct that chickens really love. So the chickens eat them up, and they're still a good nutrient source for the chickens. You could still do that with, like if you've got a reptiles, the beetle is a very tough exoskeleton, especially when they are dead and dried out. So that may not be a good idea, but poultry should be okay with it. But that's what we do with ours. So we'll either cull them, which means we're going to terminate them, or we'll feed them to the chickens or somebody here on our road. We live out in the away from the city, so we've got a lot of folks around here who can put those beetles to good use. Good question, Caitlin. Once you freeze the bran, is it safe to pull out, or do you leave it in there until you need it? Usually I'm pulling it out so that I can start, Shannon, so I can start another batch, so to speak, of freezing bran. So I'll take it out, and usually it doesn't sit for more than a day or two, I would say, out of the freezer, because once it's out, then that always opens up the potential that whatever bugs might be in the building anywhere could migrate into that bran and then cause problems, right? So we try to get it used within a couple days of it coming out, or at least I use a 55-gallon steel drum, food grade steel drum, to store my bran in the insect room, so that it's sealed for, like, mealworms are getting out constantly, and naturally there's bugs in here, and so they'll potentially get into a bag of wheat bran as well. So I use that steel drum with a lid on it, just to keep the bran clean as long as possible. Blake, have you noticed the difference between feeding carrots versus potato? Mine seem to devour the carrot to nothing, whereas I see the potato seems to dry out faster. I experienced the reverse whenever I did potatoes and carrots. They went through the potatoes much faster. My thought at that point was because the carrots dried out faster and got harder faster, and mealworms don't, like, they want to naturally go for something that's easier for them to chew and metabolize, right? So they use less energy eating it, but they would go after those potatoes, and you've got the opposite. So I wonder if I was using like regular carrots, like the not the mini ones. They're not the baby carrots, the mini carrots. I was using just the full, carrot, and then putting that through a French fry slicer to get it into segments, and then throwing that into a bin. I did the same thing with the potatoes, and it seems like the potatoes went very, very fast compared to the carrots. That was a long time ago when I still fed those. Now what I'm seeing is like any type of stuff I put in there is getting eaten pretty quickly. So I actually pick up food scraps from a local catering business on Thursdays and feed that to the superworms and the mealworms that are staying in the colony, and they eat that stuff up very quickly. Good question. I went ahead and let some of the tiny corners pew more for the beetles. They are tiny as well. There's not reached the point where those eggs have hatched the worms. See what the outcome is. Keep us updated. Sue's on an answering spree. I love it. Yes. The chickens love them. Yes, yes, yes. Sue, do you include the dead ones? I do. I'm not sure if Sue does. The dead ones are... usually what I find is the dead ones aren't harboring anything, like they're not growing with mold. They're dry. They're just extremely dry. And so, hey Lucas, welcome. And so I don't have a concern, about any sort of pathogen problems from a health perspective. It's not like it's a rotting corpse filled with maggots, right? So it's basically like it was dehydrated almost, because all the moisture content is gone out of it. I might have to do a thickness of the slices. That's a good one. I get five whole carrots, peel them and section them up. I give the beetles the peels. Beetles don't eat a lot of physical, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't feel like they eat a lot. They'll eat moisture sources, but like the bran I put in doesn't go away. They'll eat some of it, but not a lot. I wonder if the same thing is happening with the carrots. I wonder if they're eating enough of it, getting the moisture they need and going away. And maybe there's more moisture in the carrots, so they're not eating the potatoes as fast, or you're putting in more potatoes, because potatoes have more moisture than carrots, don't they? I guess it really depends on them. Like when you do it, how many you put in, beetle count, that sort of thing. So it could be all over the place. That's an interesting observation, though. I had the exact opposite experience. It's a pain, though. That's one of the reasons why I switched to water gel crystals. One, the food around here got expensive. Even trying to get it, outside of a retail setting, the problem I had there was getting it consistently. And so I switched to the water gel crystals, and I don't have the issue anymore of gunk in the trays, mucking up the processing, the sifting, sorting. So I don't have a mesh screen that's bigger than the 1/4 inch. I don't use that one anymore, because I don't have big clumps of stuff in there. They eat the water gel crystals all completely gone. So, I've started to get back into the routine of feeding those the food waste, the scraps, on Thursday evenings or on Friday mornings. And so far they're eating everything: kiwis, strawberries, the pineapple. They didn't seem to really enjoy. The mealworms didn't seem to like that. Probably the acidity, a lot of acidity. But the beetles, both the mealworm beetles and the superworm beetles, really like those. They ate on those pretty well. Kiwi I mentioned. Onions, red onions, they don't seem to enjoy. They eat them. So if the bin is scheduled, what I found is like we feed moisture on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And what I found is if it's a bin that was just fed, so let's say I get behind on something and I don't process that food until late Friday, and I've already fed them their moisture because I want to be consistent with that. I don't want them to not have it. Then if I give them that food the next day, they're not as attacking it, right? Whereas if I fed them that moisture source that Friday morning as their moisture source, if I fed the feed or the food waste, then they would attack that onion and eat it. And the only thing they left was like that outside crackly peel that you always, like when you're cutting an onion as a human, like cut it and get rid of that outside piece, the dry protective outer layer. They don't eat that. So I think they really prefer not to eat the onions, but they will if that's their only thing. Mine love bananas and the peels. Yes, bananas are a big hit. The peels are really good. It's a good, like mealworms are really a good food waste, like system to have in your house. There's actually a company, they were called Biobia. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. They just rebranded. There's a guy, he's not in the US, but he designed and bootstrapped this whole thing. I've been watching him for the last couple of years. He designed like a model that sits on your shelf. It's designed to be in a kitchen, one in everybody's kitchen, and you just put your food scraps in there to feed the colony, and then you get mealworms out of it to do whatever you want to, right? You can, like, they're in your kitchen, so it would be a much safer scenario to eat those as a human or feed them to whatever you've got, right? Still use them for reptiles, poultry, etc. But he designed a really cool system. It's kind of expensive, but he started by 3D printing them in his own building. Like, he designed it, printed them, went through all that stuff on his own. Pretty interesting. I can't remember what the system's called, but he was a big advocate of using the food waste in your kitchen. So banana peels, like, no, we don't eat banana peels, right? And there's not a thing that normally eats those, but mealworms will. So you can throw those in there and keep them nice and healthy. All right, friendly reminder, we've got, 17 minutes left. I'm having a really hard time today with math. 17 minutes left till the top of the hour, and I do have a hard stop today, unfortunately. I have to go do my oil, go change that myself in the truck, get that done. So, gotta get it done before I have to go do all my fun family stuff this afternoon. Yeah, we don't need the banana skin. It makes it, the other thing you can do with those outside of feeding them to the insects, which everybody here would probably do, it makes a really good, make a tea out of it. Throw it in a thing of water, let it sit for a while. You might need to boil it to make it even better, but then pour that water on your plants. The nutrients inside that banana, the plants are just going to gobble up. So it's a good method for like non-fertilizer type stuff. If you have kids or pets or things like that, do that with a banana. Or use your mealworm frass, right? Make a compost tea and pour that in. I have to think, so I've been in the US all my life. I have to think that there's a better way to deal with banana skins. Like, is there some trick that Americans never learned because we were taught to throw it away? Like, I don't know. All right, anywho, we have got 15 minutes left, so keep the questions coming. Again, if I have not addressed your question, if I missed it, if I scrolled too fast, or if it didn't show up, please message me and let me know. And any questions that, as we get down to the wire here, if you ask a question and I don't answer it, I will go back through. Usually I try to do that the same day. Today it's already the end of the day, so it might be late tonight or early tomorrow before I get to it. But I'll go through everything and make sure everybody's question I either answered here on the live or replied to it in the comment. You can also reach out to me, Facebook Messenger, email Justin at midwestmealworms.com. Happy to answer questions and see how I can help. Oh, and I have to go to the post office today. Oh, shoot. I probably shouldn't do the oil change just in case something bad happens. Shoot. Okay. Lynn, I see it. I see you here. Thank you for messaging me. How do you freeze dry mealworms? Also, have you ever grown food during the summer, freeze dried it, then rehydrated it to be fed to them in the winter? Freeze dried. Anybody out here have any experience with freeze drying them? So I'll read that one more time because I kind of mumbled. I'm sorry. How do you freeze dry mealworms? Also, have you ever grown food during the summer, freeze dried it, then rehydrated it to be fed to them in the winter? So I personally have not freeze dried it. Max, have you? Do I remember correctly? Do you freeze dry them and sell them dried? I believe you have to have a specific machine to do that. I don't feel like that's just something, like you can dehydrate them in your oven. On the lowest setting, they're likely to turn a very dark color and look visually unappealing, but there's nothing wrong with them as long as you dehydrate them long enough. If you use eBay, Shopify, etc. to use their label purchases, you get a pretty good discount. Blake, is that related to something I missed? I'm not sure if that was for this or something else. Lynn has a freeze dryer. Okay, so we need to get some. Has anybody here used a freeze dryer to freeze dry mealworms? And then the second question, Lynn, have you freeze dried the food and then rehydrated it to be fed to them? I haven't personally done that, but that's an interesting idea. I'm wondering if, maybe instead of rehydrating it, what if you, there it is. That's what I thought I remembered. Max has one. Max has got some feedback for us probably. Oh, thank you. I didn't see that comment, Blake. Sorry. It's like my brain is mush today. It's like I'm a squirrel and I'm jumping around. You must drop the temp of the trays. No. Anyway, so the thought I have on rehydrating, what if you just took that and ground it up and fed to it, use that as their substrate, but that's their nutrient feed source as well. But I would think that you could probably take that and rehydrate it, get it moist again, and then use it that way. Good deal. Thank you, Max. Middle of shipping, getting those orders out. I love it. All right. I'll do a little bit of research on that as well and see what we can come up with. I would also encourage you to go through the Facebook group. There should be a search option. See if you can find freeze dried. I think if you search up freeze, you'll probably get a lot of posts about freezing wheat bran or cooking wheat bran. That topic is a common one. And then if there's not anything recent, we've got some feedback from Max coming, but post it in the group too. Throw it out there. See if anybody who didn't attend today, see if they've got any feedback on it that they can throw out there. All right, I see that comment there about the flower beetles. Lucas, give me just a sec. I got a question here from Blake. There we go. Got it. All right, so Karen, thank you, Blake, for tagging me here. I did not see this one. How do you get ahead by doing free shipping? That adds up on small orders. Shipping is not free. For me right now on the website and on most of my listings on eBay, I sell in both locations. I'm testing this out right now, but in most of my locations, or most of my postings on eBay and everything on my website, the shipping is baked into the price. So unless you can truly get free shipping, which I don't think is possible, the price that you pay for something, the shipping's included in it. And so the cost on my website, I actually went through an exercise in the last few weeks where I calculated all of my expenses, and we have kept track of all of our harvest data for harvested mealworms since 2000 and end of 2019, I think. So from the old building up till now. So we calculated all of that. I put all those numbers together and found out what it cost me to raise an individual mealworm and then package all those up. Meaning I have a bag, I have newspaper, I have the box, which technically is free sometimes from USPS, but it's included in their shipping cost, so it's really not free. Honestly, it's not. So for example, like a $14 or $15 or 1,000 count mealworm on my website is $15 free shipping. That, $8 or $9 that it costs for me to ship that to somebody in Missouri or surrounding states is baked into the overall price. There are also small additional fees, unfortunately, on my site, because to ship out to places like Washington State is there's a regional fee that I have to apply to that. I believe it's $4.50 because it's more expensive for me to ship from here to Washington than from here to Missouri. There are apps that make that a much easier process to where you can create dynamic shipping based on somebody's location, because I, as a consumer, I really don't like it when I go to a website and it says free shipping, but then there's a fee at the end. And I acknowledge that's something I need to fix on the website, but I don't have the funding right now to get the API, to do all the backend, and even the apps are expensive. So how I'm tackling it right now is it's embedded into the price of the overall cost on the website. And then as things sell, so one of the things you could do is you could go through and do a lot of calculations in the various different locations based on your region and what it costs to get somewhere. USPS has maps and everything that'll give you a general idea. But what I've done is as something sells, I look at that and I'll see, that's higher than the $8-9, average or normal. Where's that going, and does it have the right fee associated with it? Because USPS costs just went up recently, and they'll continue to go up. I don't see them going down, and so it's something to just keep an eye on. Ideally, long term, I would like to switch to where it's a flat fee for whatever mealworms you want, and then the shipping fee is honestly based on from me to you, and it's whatever that is. I don't like the idea of having that as a back end kind of thing. I think that's the simplest way to go from a consumer perspective. A lot of people really love free shipping though, so there's also that aspect you have to think about, and that's why I'm kind of testing it on eBay right now. I've got a listing that has shipping baked into it, and then I have a listing that has a lower price for the mealworms with a shipping fee, and it's based on wherever that person's located. And so I'm just going to kind of monitor those over time and see, are folks kind of changing their mind? Are they okay with that sort of thing? So Blake, on my website you have to purchase X until you have free shipping, otherwise I just charge like a $6 flat rate. Yep, that's another good way to cover the lower spectrum, right? That's a really good option. I like that. That usually covers a large portion of the actual shipping cost. Agree. Use my USPS credentials to do live shipping quotes on my website. Felicia, what is your website? Promote it. Put it in here. Let's see it. I didn't know you had a website. I'm totally missing that. Well, my brain decided to go really numb today. USPS credentials to do live shipping quotes on my website. You bet, Karen. Thank you for asking that question. That's a good one. That's one that I'm working with a website designer right now, and one of the things I told them is on my hit list is I want to be able to charge the actual shipping, so that really what I think that does is it incentivizes folks to maybe shop around a bit to find somebody closer to them. Because if I ship 5,000 mealworms to somebody in Missouri, it's like $8.88, $8.83. But if I ship 5,000 mealworms to somebody in Oregon, I'll pick on Max. If I ship out there, it's like $12, $13, $14. California is starting to get really, and in some cases, it's variant on the zip code. So there are some places in Florida where it's like ridiculous. I'm not sure what's going on, but dynamic pricing would be far better. It's better for the end consumer because that way you're not baking it into where you're like, well, it doesn't really cost you to ship it that much. It's exactly what it is to ship it. I like it. I want Felicia's site too. Right. How'd you do that? We got to go look at this. Felicia, I'm really interested. If you're willing to share your website here, please do that. If not, I might have to just go start doing some Googling, because that's one of the things that I feel like, one of the long-term goals or dreams in the back of my head is to have regional type small mealworm farms like mine, obviously, that services this particular area. And it's a really good example is what Max and Scott and I have done in this group. We all are running a business. Scott recently stopped selling mealworms. He's doing his laser cutting stuff. There we go. All right, I'm going to check that out later. It's not live yet, but it's not my only business. Okay, I love it. When it's live, message me. I'd love to look at that. So where was I at? Oh, it'd be really awesome, especially for end consumers, to be able to get mealworms from local people, right, that are closer to you, because it's less stress on the insects, it's shorter shipping time, and it should be lower shipping costs. Should be is, depending on how big you get, you can always look at trying to get discounts from places. But in general, if you're closer to something, it's going to cost you less to ship it. And so, dreamland in my head is folks are building these independent businesses, but coming together in a mealworm farming co-op to work together and share ideas like this, have have the businesses that they have and serve the communities around them. So we'll see. Where did y'all make your website? You need to make one. I did mine originally through WordPress. I have a coding background. I actually got a degree in computer programming, and then worked in software up until 8 months ago. And so sorry, I saw a comment there. So I used WordPress at first. It felt like it took more coding knowledge. Like you don't have to write code, but it helps, and you can go in and customize it. And it seemed like WordPress worked really well for that. So I used that for a long time. And then I switched to Shopify. I started having problems with the plugins in WordPress, and it just got to be way too much. So I switched to Shopify, and now I'm looking at probably sticking with Shopify. I don't have any concerns or problems with them, honestly. I just need a better website from a fluidity and a user experience perspective. So that's why I'm talking with a web company right now. It's actually a connection I have through my old job. They left and started their own web development business. So it's good to network with people. I can do a post in the group on how I do it and the platform I use. That would be awesome. Yes, thumbs up, Felicia. Love it. I'm dropping off from 15,000 mealworms to my local pet store this weekend. It's in-store credit, but hey, I want more reptiles anyway. That's a good one. I haven't talked about that model before. That's an interesting setup you've got there. So instead of like selling them directly or doing a consignment or cupping them for them, you're just getting store credit and then feeding your reptile hobby. I love that. Squarespace. I haven't used Squarespace, but I know that like that's a good processing platform, right? To process payments. I think they also have the website piece of that as well. But Lynn, I do see your comment over there that on the regional idea. I'm not sure why it won't let you post in the group here. Facebook's get a little buggy sometimes. Like I couldn't see that comment before, but. Yeah, lots of good stuff coming, hopefully for everybody. All right, well, we are 1 minute away, so I'll start closing some things out. This will all be posted to the Facebook group. It does take a little while for Facebook to churn through all this. They check it, make sure we haven't done anything we shouldn't have been doing, and then it'll post to the group, and it'll be there indefinitely. And then I'll take this. There have been a couple requests to get it on YouTube as well, so I'll post it there, so you can watch these separate from Facebook in the event that you want to do that. If anybody has any other questions, please tack them on here, and we'll do another one of these. I'll pick a different day, different time, trying to get time zones in. I have not done one yet, like in the middle of the night for me. I know there's a lot of folks that might be in other locations of the world, so we'll probably look into that in the future. But thank you guys for jumping on, all the good questions. Thank you for the comments here, Shannon, Jennifer, appreciate that. Yes, Lucas, it'll be in the Facebook group. Might take a little bit to post, but it'll be out there, and we'll do more of these in the future. Thank you guys very much. Blake, thanks for the laugh today. I appreciate it. Everybody have an awesome afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you're at. Thank you.